Welcome everybody officially to Career Q&A Live, a series by UCSB Career Services that brings professionals and UCSB students together virtually to learn about different career paths, ask questions, and make connections. In this session, we will be discovering a day in the life of two fantastic UCSB alumni who are offering their personalized advice for students looking to gain experience and get hired in the marketing field. And best of all, for those of us who are live on today's session, you get to have your questions answered via our Q&A function here in Zoom. So a quick rundown of our agenda for this hour. We are going to start off with a quick intro about our panelists, followed by a few questions I've prepared for our session, as well as the questions that we receive from you all on the line as students. So if you're tuning in live, once again, you are more than encouraged to submit your questions in the Q&A tool on your screen, really at any time today. So definitely take advantage of that opportunity. We'll be going through them mostly on a first come, first serve basis, but also sort of as it helps inform our conversation together to enrich our great conversation. So. Also, I wanted to mention that this session is being recorded. If you're happening to watch it on YouTube, be sure to check out today's questions in the description below if you'd like to jump ahead. And in the event that we get disconnected, please, everybody can just rejoin via the link that you used to access the session, and that would be much appreciated. Quick introduction about myself. I will be our host. My name is Eric Wilder. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a career counselor for students interested in careers related to communications and arts with UCSB Career Services. I have also served as a digital content and communications strategist for my department for about a 2-year project in the last couple of years, and have met with hundreds of students who are eager to pursue careers in marketing. Through my 4 years in this work, I know it is a hot, in-demand career, and I know that there's a lot of excited students to be learning about these options. So we're grateful for everyone's time today. And one other kind of fun fact about me, I'm actually enrolled in the Digital Marketing Certificate program with UCSB Professional and Continuing Education. So I'm excited to learn tonight about some of the work we're going to be hearing from our two panelists. And we're all UCSB alumni here. So I graduated back in 2010 with my bachelor's degree in geography, and it's really fun to be working with UCSB students nowadays. So I also wanted to give a quick shout out and introduction to Malena Halle, who is a career peer advisor with UCSB Career Services. She will be in the background helping to field your questions via Q&A. So you are welcome to ask questions that pertain specifically to this panel related to careers in marketing. Or if you just have general questions about careers, go ahead and submit it via Q&A. She is more than excited to give you a resource, a tip. Could just be a general resume question. How do I make an appointment at Career Services? What do I do with my life? Feel free to just send anything via Q&A, and we'll try to incorporate it as best as we can into this very rich hour of conversation. Without further ado, I am now pleased to introduce our panelists. I'll start with Sohila Sandher. She is a Channel and Alliances Marketing Manager at Contrast Security and an alumnus of the History Department at UCSB. Shout out to class of 2016. Sohila worked as an operations manager in the event hospitality industry before transitioning into the cybersecurity space. Her diverse background includes event management, retail, restaurant operations, and field marketing. Quite a nice range of work experience there. And she's currently a partner marketing manager for Contrast Security, which is an application security company based in Los Altos, California. She manages go-to-market functions with key partners, including AWS, Microsoft, and major technology resellers. A very warm welcome to Sohila. Thank you for tuning in here today from up north. Also, I'd like to introduce Peyton Bush, who is a product marketing manager at Qualia. Peyton graduated from UC Santa Barbara in 2016 with a double major in cultural anthropology and Italian studies. After college, she transitioned from intern to full-time employee at a cybersecurity company in the Bay Area, where she fulfilled numerous marketing roles related to events, operations, advertising, content development, and product marketing. Again, the full range. Love it. So Peyton currently works as a product marketing manager at Qualia, which is a real estate technology company where she manages cross-functional teams on go-to-market strategy and execution. In her free time, Peyton loves exploring San Francisco and coming up with truly terrible puns. And perhaps what's most exciting about tonight's session is that this is not only a panel featuring two fabulous UCSB alumni, but is also a reunion of two best friends who met on the very first day of UCSB when moving into the residence halls. So from FT, or also known as Santa Catalina, to SF, also known as San Francisco, Sohila and Peyton have paved the path toward careers in marketing for UCSB students, and now they have returned to tell their story. I have a feeling we're in for a really special session tonight, and on behalf of UCSB students, I just wanted to give another warm virtual welcome back to Sohila and Peyton. Woo! They're cheering all over.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
So, all right, let's start off with a question that I think is probably burning on, I'm going to go off on a limb and say on every student's mind right now who tuned in tonight. And that is, what is it exactly that you do for a living? What's a typical day like in your position, in your field, in your industry? Maybe if you can tell us some examples of the projects your work entails, that would be great. But maybe let's go ahead and start off with Sohila if you'd like to kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really, really excited to be here. Just as a note, like even throughout this whole thing and even afterwards, please always feel comfortable contacting me. I love talking about this stuff and I really love UCSB, so always feel that. So as Eric said, I am a partner marketing manager at Contrast Security. This is a role that has emerged with the emergence of the rise of like so many different software tools. And it's kind of a very vague job. Like it's not one you hear about when you first think of traditional marketing. So the best way I've found to like explain it to people is it's kind of like how when you're going grocery shopping, you don't go to the farm to get your vegetables or whatever. You go to like a meal plan service or to like an established brand like Safeway to get your food. So software vendors actually kind of work the same way, where they only have one product that solves a specific thing in cybersecurity. So companies often turn to established resellers or big partners like Microsoft to provide direction on what singular vendor products will fit the product stack they already have. So I like to think of myself as like the cybersecurity carrot farmer that is trying to sell my carrots to like HelloFresh and like Safeway. And so with that, my job is just to make our company look really cool by aligning our brand with these big companies through various activities, events, webinars, customer studies, social media, you know, all of kind of the tools in the marketing belt. But also I work to do enablement to get those companies' sellers to work and want to sell us. So day to day, that's just really a lot of program management, a lot of calling on partners and being like, what cool thing are you doing? Can I be a part of that cool thing? And just kind of bringing together a bunch of different parts of our company to share that with these partner companies and make them interested in us.
Awesome. I guess I'll go ahead and take it away. Thank you so much, Eric, for the introduction, and Sohila, always good to see you. Like Sohila said, always feel free to reach out to me if you guys have questions. I'm just Peyton Bush on LinkedIn. Love to chat with folks and always love to give advice, so definitely feel free to reach out. I am a product marketing manager at Qualia, like Eric mentioned, which is kind of a fancy way of saying when the company makes a new product or a feature, I'm that person in charge of making sure everyone knows about it. So my day-to-day changes a ton. There's a lot of variety in what I do. I would definitely say, like, on summation, like nobody escapes a conversation with me in the company. I spend about half my time communicating with everyone and figuring out what are you doing, and really leveraging my knowledge of our customers and hopefully soon to be customers, as well as the people internally to figure out how do we get everyone organized to talk about this new thing that we've developed? How do I help other people understand how to like engage with this new project, engage with other people, and really just serve as a huge source of information from people. And then like in the day-to-day, that can turn into a lot of looking at what our competitors are doing for some competitive analysis. It's a lot of content creation. So everything across the board, I'm usually that person that's helping everyone else figure out, here's how you write about this in this specific medium. And it's a lot of just checking in and project management as well. So figuring out how do we get everyone to kind of make sure we're doing everything at the right time. So it's a great job for somebody who loves a lot of variety and could never really make their mind up about one specific thing.
That's great. Thank you both for that introduction. And I think that'll help us sort of get oriented with with the work you're currently doing. As we kind of backtrack a bit now to your days as an undergraduate student at UCSB, I know you're both doing like really specific work. I'm guessing students on the line are like, wow, I never really knew that was a thing. Let's talk a bit about how you got started in this career path, maybe as related to the education, the experiences, and let's say the skills that you gained outside of class.
Totally, and I'm happy to take this one first. So I grew up in the suburbs of the Silicon Valley, and it's very much a place where there's a lot of really specific ideas about how do you be successful and what do you do in life. It's like, are you starting a company? Are you going ahead and being a software engineer? Stuff like that. But I was always really passionate about history and about learning about people. So I came into UC Santa Barbara with two really specific goals in mind. One was which was I was going to be an archaeologist or an anthropologist, and the other was I was going to learn Italian because I have Italian step family, and I really wanted to be able to compliment them on their pasta myself instead of having to go through a translator. So I set about to study abroad and go to Italy, and I'm happy to say I accomplished learning a decent amount of Italian and going and spending some time in Europe. But the other thing, the more I got into the major of anthropology, the more I kind of found over time that while I love my classes and I love the subject, I didn't want to be an anthropologist and I didn't want to be an archaeologist. And that was kind of crushing at the time. You know, I was always a person that had a really set plan in mind, and I felt honestly really lost, kind of admitting to myself that everything I'd worked towards, I suddenly didn't know what I wanted to do after that. So it was kind of an interesting process for me to like reflect on that myself and accept that, and then try to figure out what I wanted to do after that. And kind of came to the conclusion that there were certain things out of anthropology that I really liked and certain things that I might be interested in, and was really fortunate to have a connection after college of somebody who could help me figure out maybe marketing was the right call for me and kind of help me set up an internship. I interned, I tried it out, and through kind of a series of events found that marketing was actually a really good fit for me. But a lot of it was kind of reflecting on what were the specific pieces of my major that I really liked and trying to figure out how do I turn that into a career and how do I just give myself the space to think through a new option. And I think that's, you know, Sohila, a lot of what you kind of encountered too.
Yeah, absolutely. My background is a little bit different. So just to kind of give a little bit of information on that, I am a first generation born here. My parents immigrated from India. And I think a lot of people that have that same experience can understand that their parents are very focused on future financial security and have a very limited scope of what careers ensure that. So that, along with coming from this kind of a small farm town up in Northern California, meant that like I didn't necessarily gain all of like the very beautiful discipline skills that you should have to like take on some of the majors that are available here at times. And so for me, I kind of faced some difficulties when I first came to UCSB. I went in biopsych, and Alex was not my friend. So I switched over to psych, and I found that that wasn't quite my fit either. And then I went to econ, and my thought process was kind of like, this is where, you know, I can get a job. Like it just felt safe at that time for me. And while I was there, I was working on a project in community outreach, and I found this history of public policy, which I love. Like back in the day, I used to be such a House of Cards fan. Like I love that stuff. So it was actually like the smallest major at UCSB. I graduated with 11 other people. And so with that, we can imagine that it's not exactly one that has focuses on like, what's your next career and how do you translate this into a job if you're not somebody that's going to law school or grad school, which wasn't financially feasible for me at the time. So I took a gap year, and I think, you know, we can talk about this a little bit later, but gap years are incredibly, incredibly valuable. And I think this current climate might be a time that makes them a little bit more valuable. But yeah, I took a gap year, and I always worked in restaurants. I always worked in operations, and taking that time to kind of recognize the world outside of the academia kind of helped me realize how translatable those skills are. So I use those to get into marketing and help me with program management and things like that. But I don't want to discredit what I learned in my major, because I truly did find a lot of like applicable skills from there. Like outside of a really great Facebook argument, my degree helped me understand relationships by studying different government interactions with each other. Just to break it down a little bit, I studied Middle East and US policy specifically between 1915 and 1929. And let's just say that that's like very specific and not translatable. You know, I can't just like walk into a company and be like, hey, you want to learn about this? And beyond that, my thesis focused on nation states, cultural policy, and how they use that to kind of build their persona. And at a very, very broad level, that is kind of what marketing is. Like, as a marketer, your ultimate goal is to create a shared collective feeling of belonging within your product and brand. So when you work to think about like what that may mean, how do you create offers and use cases that would relate to who you're trying to sell to? And even with partnerships, like how do I create like a family between partnerships, our company, and the customers that we're looking for? There's always translatable skills. I think part of it is just learning the language to explain how they are translatable.
Yeah, thank you so much for those insights. I think that it's really cool to hear kind of how each of you learned internally through different experiences, whether it was an internship or the gap year, or sort of like these high impact experiential activities that you were doing outside of class during and beyond your degree. And still finding ways to sort of connect the degree in a useful way, although it might have been surprising or hard to predict looking ahead sometimes, I know. And I saw a question from a student that came in through Q&A that sort of connects to this as a follow-up. So I'll go ahead and ask it on behalf of the student. How do you recommend we make the most use of our major to pursue a career in marketing or in the various business disciplines, even if it might not seem to be related to the field? And perhaps, you know, you could draw from some personal experience here, or maybe even can we broaden that to other majors at UCSB? What are your thoughts about this?
I have a really specific answer to this. So I studied anthropology, and like I still maintain anthropology. Like it's a social science. When I told people like what two majors I was studying, they were like, "What are you gonna do with both of those degrees or either of those degrees?" And I was like, "There is nothing that you're doing that isn't related to people." Yeah. There's nothing that you do that doesn't relate to people. Like people are a part of everything, even technology. Some person made that, and so I really tried to leverage like, what did I like out of my majors, and really thought about that and really tried to turn that into like a narrative about myself. And so my current job that I have, you know, I came in and interviewed, and part of being a product marketer is you're really supposed to like understand your audience and kind of be the advocate for them at the company and be the person that's like, this person often like looks at these places for information and they really care about these things and they don't want to hear about these things. And so what I came in and said when I was interviewing was, you know, I studied anthropology in school. I'm really passionate about learning about people, and I actually learned really specific ways how to do that. I don't think we're going to do an ethnographic study here within the confines of this company necessarily, but I can apply a lot of those principles to marketing. And I also said, you know, I spent a lot of time learning Italian. I'm not speaking Italian that much these days anymore, but what I did get really comfortable with was trying to translate something and communicating with people even when I had no idea really what I was saying, and just being comfortable being uncomfortable with communications at times and finding ways to translate concepts to people. Often in marketing, it's like you're translating something that might be really technical to an audience that isn't that technical. And my boss told me after the fact, he was like, you know, you didn't necessarily have every box we were like looking to check, but he was like, I loved your story and I loved that you studied anthropology and talked about that. And he's like, that is the reason you stuck out to me. And so that was huge. And I really just encourage people to like, think about what you like and like totally feel free to talk about that. Even if it's something that doesn't seem like it translates to marketing, there are way more applicable, like uses of all of the things that you've learned that you might think at first.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, you know, something, Peyton and I are both in positions where we are now hiring, and we are the ones running the interviews. And when I see somebody come in from go Gaucho's like a top 10 university, I know that that person has time management skills. I know that that person has project management skills. Like we're go-getters, you know, you didn't get through school without working hard. So it's not like, it's more like just finding out like what parts of your major helped you think a certain way and how those apply to the type of thinking needed in that job, right? Like, I mean, we just talked about how weird my major was, right? Not weird, but like very specific. And so it's like, I had to think about like, yeah, that was very specific and it was in a very academic environment, but I still had to go through the work of project managing myself, of time managing that, of selling that this was something that I believed in, and my essays and all of that. And those are like, honestly, some of the biggest translatable skills.
Yeah, just to second that, you know, I can't tell you the number of people I've interviewed this year, and many of them kind of for more junior roles. And often the biggest thing that we're looking for is, does this seem like somebody we can work really easily with? Does this seem like somebody who's really excited about learning? Does it seem like somebody who knows how to learn? So already coming from a university background like UC Santa Barbara is a huge advantage. And it's like really a place where it's like, you're going and doing a lot of things all the time. I know this is somebody who could come in and do the work, and kind of coming up with your story of your interests and the way you think is a really good way to stand out from a crowd and really be memorable in a group of already really talented people.
Yeah, I think a lot of, and especially in the Silicon Valley, it's all startup land, right? And even in other companies now. And so I think that the model for the type of employee that people are looking for has changed from like necessarily, like in my experience anyways, like what is a GPA and what was your major and things like that, to more like, what do you bring to the table? Like you as yourself, your creative way. Because I found even like, I'm still pretty junior in my career, but like I at a startup can be like, I want to change this, and someone's like, all right, do it, because there's so much work. It is really like, I just want everyone that's on this to like have confidence in who they are and not just be like feel worried about like my major, my GPA, I did this, because as we continue talking, you'll come to find that we both kind of did a very wild path to get to where we are.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point for students to be hearing right now, in that it's almost like what I'm hearing you say is, don't let your major define you. Like, you define your life and your career. And one of the beautiful things I see as sort of an observer of the process as a career counselor, and I guess my story probably fits into this too, but that'll be a story for another day, is, you know, there really are such a wide number of career options that stem from liberal arts majors, and UCSB has a lot of liberal arts majors. If anyone here is in the College of Letters and Science, that's you. And so sometimes what I see in students is the opportunity and the challenge at the same time, right? The challenge is like, okay, I have a lot of options, but where do I start? And I know I can adapt over time, and that's in a sense a source of competitive advantage that I have as a UCSB student. So I was wondering, let's see here. I see actually quite a few good student questions coming in. I want to see if we can get to all of them. We're going to do it. Let's go to this interesting question here, thinking about kind of into the future. So as a lot of students right now are thinking about grad school as a way to dive deeper in their preparation for careers, especially maybe if they feel like their major didn't quite prepare them in a specific way. They might go, okay, I'm going to go to grad school to do that now. Maybe I know my career and I'm going to go to grad school. So for marketing specific, what are your thoughts on the value of grad school right now in the current current landscape?
I don't discredit going to grad school for marketing at all. I think that it is something that can provide you a network, and it can definitely, you know, help you advance the skills that you need and provide you exposure to different types of marketing. But for me, I don't know that I would have ever chosen to go to grad school for marketing. And if I did, I've thought about it now, but I've thought about it for like when I'm like 10 years from now. You know, when I'm looking to get to executive levels. And the reason why I say that is because I think, and I mean, Peyton's experience really tells this, is like when companies kind of hire like a marketing coordinator, it's a very broad thing because they recognize that like chances are you still haven't found exactly what you want to do, but they realize that you're somebody that can kind of do everything. And so taking that time to kind of understand exactly what, like, I didn't even know my job existed 2 years ago. And like taking that time to understand and get that exposure can help you going to grad school to get more value out of what you do in grad school. So it's not like you're going in for general, like further learning. You're going in like saying like, I really want to get good at this one thing. And it'll help you become a true specialist.
I really second that. To speak to my personal journey to it too. So I came into a company and I had no idea really what marketing was or how it worked in many different ways. Felt very fortunate to be there and decided I was going to try whatever they threw at me. And so I did marketing operations, wasn't really that enthused about it. Did digital marketing, really struggled with that. Did field marketing, also found it kind of challenging. But by that time, I'd kind of, just by the act of doing and kind of trying to figure everything out, had learned a lot more about what you could do in marketing, and wound up raising my hand up and saying, hey, I love writing. I would love to try content marketing. Did that for a while. And then my boss and my CMO at the time kind of sat me down and they said, hey, we're going to have you be our first product marketer at the company. And I said, great. What is product marketer? What do they do? And they were like, don't worry, we'll get you training. So I think one of the beautiful things about marketing that is like also challenging at times is like, it's so broad. There's so much you can do in it and it's constantly evolving. Product marketing as like a discipline didn't really exist 10 years ago. I had no idea it existed when I started. So I think there's a ton of value in coming into a company and getting some experience in the company and seeing what it's like. And then trying a bunch of different things and being open to trying a lot of different things. Possibly before making an investment in grad school where you can get really, really in depth and really learn the discipline of marketing that you want to focus in specifically. So I think there's, again, like a ton of value in grad school in terms of the network and things like that. But I really do feel like by being in the environment, by doing things, by trying so many different things, I figured out a ton of information that I otherwise might not have. And I zeroed in on something that I was really passionate about.
And also, I mean, I think, Eric, you can speak a little bit to this. Like, there are so many courses that you can do that are outside of committing to a full master's degree. Like, I've done like 2 or 3 night classes that cost me like, $200, $300 to learn copywriting or learn skills that I felt I was lacking in my, like, job search, basically. Like, I was like, if I had this on my resume, I'd look better. And so I just did those little classes, and those might even look honestly better to an employer.
There's also, I think, something to consider. Not every company will have this, and they have them to different degrees, but many companies actually have education stipends available to employees. So I have taken 2 courses that were about $1,000 each that were paid for by the company that were specific to product marketing that really helped me accelerate my skills, but it was the investment of like a week instead of a year or more. Yeah. So there are often options when you do start in somewhere, and they're often looking to invest in their employees.
Yeah, I love those points. I will echo all of them because I think everything I've also noticed as an observer of the marketing field, seeing job descriptions and so forth, that students have strong preparation with the transferable skills that we mentioned, through these liberal arts majors. But it's then, okay, how can we get a little more specialization in like a couple of these really targeted areas? And, if I could take one course online in product marketing and be able to speak that language a bit, so to speak, maybe that's going to help me stand out and gain an edge. And that's just an example. So I think that this is a useful strategy when it comes to graduate school. It's really thinking about return on investment of the cost, time, and energy into that experience. I have another sort of follow-up related question in this regard. We got into some nice sort of deep dives into areas of marketing that you've both been involved in. And this student is interested to hear your interpretation of the difference between strategic marketing, branding, and public relations, because these are related fields or disciplines. And they're kind of curious, like, what are the overlaps, maybe how you have experienced that? We don't need a professor's textbook definition here, but like kind of in practice, what are those differences, and are there maybe unique considerations you would consider in preparing for those?
Peyton, you want to take this one?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that's a really interesting question, and I think something that Sohila can totally attest to too is, depending on the size of company you're at, depending on the specific industry you're at, there might be slightly different definitions of what all these different marketing disciplines are, just to make things interesting for all of us that are trying to get into it. But I would say overall, PR is kind of an interesting case of something that can be done within a company. You can have someone that's dedicated to it, or it can be done by an agency. Branding is also actually something that's similar to that. You can have someone focusing on it in-house, or you can have an agency that helps you with that. So depending on what you're interested in, either kind of company can be really good for you. But PR is really focused about, how do I kind of get my message out in the news? How do I become really newsworthy? So we have a PR agency that helps us at our company that's really highly connected with reporters, like at the New York Times, at the Wall Street Journal, things like that. They're constantly pitching stories, and they're really focused on kind of like an industry level, technology level. Someone that's helping you with branding might be helping you specifically with like, we want people to recognize that like this is Qualia, or like we want people to recognize that this is Apple. Apple has really specific branding, for example. So that's about telling a continuous story versus always telling like a specific news and time story. Strategic marketing, I think, is something that I'm actually continuously like learning about myself. I think no matter what part of marketing you're in, you could do something that's strategic and it's focused on like, how do I do a long-term goal? How do I achieve something in a specific way? I think if you're like executive level, like all of what you're doing to a degree is strategic marketing. But yeah, I think a good way to think about marketing at times might be to think about it in terms of, there's like a technical side to marketing that has to do with like web development, demand generation, operations, and there tends to be a more content focused side of marketing, which is, you know, content marketing itself, product marketing, or PR, or communications in general. So Hila, what would you say to those kind of points?
Yeah, just to add to them a little bit more, I think that something I've learned is that there's almost like the strategic side of marketing, and then there's like the services side of marketing. And just like Peyton and I have very much like in-house corporate marketing experience, but my boyfriend's a graphic designer and he's worked in agencies, and he just actually went in-house at Facebook. So he's kind of worked it all. And I also have friends that work at the agencies that don't do all of Google's marketing. So like those big companies will hire out these agencies, which is where you have like copywriters, graphic designers, production, account managers. And that's like all of that brand stuff, right? Like that's all the cool splashy stuff that we all get to see. PR kind of sometimes falls into that, but again, that's like an agency. So if you're somebody that really likes graphic design, really likes writing, and you don't want to be somebody that's like managing people and trying to get people together and like reporting on your goals, like you just want to put your headphones on and just write, agency side might be a little bit more for you. That's not to say that those wouldn't be within an in-house company, like a company similar to where Peyton and I are, but I think strategic marketing is a little bit more of like the in-house corporate work, where like we still have writers and stuff, but they're oftentimes giving the direction for like, what is our core messaging? What is our speakers going to talk about? And then they'll even just give it out to agencies to finish writing it, but we strategize on what that is. And to expand further in strategic marketing, because I think strategic is just this business word that everybody says, no one knows what it means. I think I work in that because my boss tells me every day, is the juice worth the squeeze? And I was like, I'm just going to get that tattooed on me because he says it so much. But it's like, it's really what you have to think about when you're thinking about strategic things, because it's like, I could do every single thing with every single partner, but I have to think about like the goal of the product and where it wants to go. So I think about like, is it more smart to align with this person? Because then we can use their technology for free to build our technology, or where are they going in 5 years, or who's going to buy us, or, you know, oh, they work with that competitor, so they won't even sell us. So that's kind of more, I think, the strategic marketing. And I think all of that is like a lot newer of a field. And I also think it's a lot newer for people that are recent grads to be able to access that. So it's kind of a lot more vague to understand.
One thing I just want to comment on too that I think is important to think through is like, if you are somebody who is interested in a lot of things, or you're struggling to decide one thing, working at a smaller company is a really good way to have to try everything, because someone once said to me, like, it's hard to make something out of nothing. And that's exactly what every new company is trying to do. They're trying to make something out of nothing. There's a ton of work involved in it. So working at a smaller company or even on a smaller team, you're going to wear a ton of hats. You're going to learn a lot by doing, and it's a great way to try things and think through things and not have to have a decision already. If you're somebody who like knows what you want to do, you want to really own a certain discipline, working at a bigger company can often be a great way to do that, because they have way more specific roles already defined. And bigger companies often have a lot of resources available to their employees. So if you really want to focus in on that professional development, that's a great way to go too. But I mean, no matter where you are, I think too, like, no knowledge is wasted. Something that you learn in one area, like all of the things I did in marketing that I felt like weren't a great fit and I was stressing out about, turned out to be the perfect training for me to do what I currently do.
Yeah, I would echo that for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point for students to hear. I want to accentuate that even one more time, of considering, if you are thinking about a career in marketing, agency versus in-house, small versus large, these are key variables that will really, I think, dictate sort of how you experience your job. And probably the nice part is there's some level of mobility there. As you evolve throughout a career, you might find, oh, well, I did this to start. Maybe you hear a lot of people kind of start by taking on wearing a lot of hats, saying yes to a lot of projects, building reputation, building a network, maybe specializing over time. That's a very common career trajectory in general. But others start with a very specific niche and they go, I want to be a copywriter, so I'm going to go after that in a really specific way. And so I want to kind of weave in another sort of technical oriented question, since we're sort of defining concepts here. I like this question from a student, sort of looking for a pro tip from you both about what's your best advice in explaining a highly technical concept to those who may not have a grasp of the technical language. Specifically in a way that's not like belittling to them, or not, a way to translate it so that you keep the relationship going and they get it, and we're off to success. What have you learned as a pro tip in this regard?
I'll let Peyton take this one for the job. So I have some advice, but Peyton could just run with this one.
I was gonna point it to you working in cybersecurity. That's a great question. It's a great question. I think this is something that, by merit of already doing what you're doing in whatever major you're doing, I guarantee you most of the people around you don't know most of anything about that specific major. So you're already practicing talking about something that other people don't understand when you're explaining to them, what do you do in sociology? Like, what do you do in another really specific area? I think the thing to keep in mind is, like, focusing on specific terms can kind of get you caught up at times. And often it's really good to just focus on, like, at the end state, what do I want them to understand and how can I relate it to emotions? I think if you're somebody who speaks two languages, like, or more, or whatever, or you're learning one, it's also a really good idea to kind of apply the same concept of, like, I really want someone to get a certain idea. It's okay if they don't necessarily get all the specifics, and, like, what do I want this person to, like, emotionally take away from this? So, at work, I am often, even though I'm talking about a technical product and I'm learning how, like, an integration between two different partnerships works, what I am focusing on is, like, what are the pain points that this technical integration is solving, and what are the value adds that we specifically provide? So I think put it into that really human realm, and don't stress too much about, like, are they getting every specific nuance of that? Because usually you have more time afterwards to get into that nuance. So what would you kind of add to that? I know you're doing this a ton of what you do too.
Yeah. I think there's two parts. The way I first interpreted this question was, like, kind of personal to me, because I, like, that whole, like, 4 major change thing, I actually didn't tell my parents any of it. And I got to the 4th major, I was like, I'm sticking to this. And a lot of that was because I felt like I couldn't figure out the words to explain that, like, this is employable and, like, this is how these jobs work. And it was just, like, a whole new realm to them. And I think that that's definitely an area where you need to be careful that you don't belittle your parents, right? Like, that would just shut them down from this whole thing a little bit more. And so I think that both in that and even trying to explain like the nuances of like deep cybersecurity partner relationships and things like that, the element that we all share is always being human. And so what I always try to do is like kind of like what Peyton said, what's the pain point? Like, you know, with my parents, it was, we're scared about your financial security in the future. So I was like, don't worry, here's X jobs. Like, here's my X skills, right? And like one of the huge things that we talk about in cybersecurity is alert fatigue, and how people that are doing these jobs get so exhausted by just looking at code all the time and trying to figure things out because they're just literally overwhelmed by code. And so we talk about how, I don't know how this product built at all, but I know that this product helps with alert fatigue by like condensing information, right? So if, as long as you keep it back to the human element and even like a shared collective of something that like we all experience, I think that there's a lot of examples you can find that will not make somebody feel like they are ignorant in a situation.
I think too, like, I completely agree with all of that. And I think another thing to think about too is like the idea of listen and match. So like, listen to how the person you're talking to talks. Like even if you can't communicate with them directly, like look at how they talk in other places, maybe it's online, and try to match some of the way that they talk, and meeting them in that middle ground is going to make it a lot easier for them to make the leap to the next part of the concept you're trying to talk through. So that's, I mean, again, I guarantee you guys are already doing this when you're home at Thanksgiving and you're talking to your family members about what you learned at school. It's the same thing at work, and it's the same thing with marketing. Kind of listen to how they talk, try to meet them halfway and connect it to that emotional point.
So great. I'm seeing really exciting connections in what I think a lot of students are learning about, maybe in an implicit way, but through their humanities education, through their social sciences education, sort of some basic philosophies or foundations about how to interact with others, even if that's just a very core sort of interwoven foundation of appreciating the struggles that others might go through. Sort of the empathy that's involved there, because I think that's really at the core of what you both do, the active listening skills, the clarifying questions with your clients, the paraphrasing, the mirroring. I'm getting into counseling technology now, but but that's what I hear you doing, and I think that's really great. That those are the sort of soft skills, the people person skills that really make a difference in the results of your projects and your work. So I'd like to maybe transition now to some job search related topics. I see a number of questions that are job search related. Obviously, we are doing this at the end of 2020. It's been a big year for the economy and the job market in terms of how it's evolved, for better or worse. And so we have some questions about job search, and let's go with. Let's talk about how do you market yourself to employers, specifically if you don't have a lot of experience, and let's say there's a job that requires like 2 to 3 years of experience. Assume that's still an entry-level position, and how do you stand out in that search?
I think maybe this is something I shouldn't necessarily say, but almost every job application where they're asking for 2 to 3 years of experience, you don't actually need the 2 to 3 years of experience. Yeah, so he looks testified to this too. No. I held myself back from a lot of potential opportunities or changes because I was really worried about meeting requirements that I saw for job applications. Come to find out, being on the opposite side of it and having spent a lot of time on it now, you don't need specifically everything that they're always saying on there, and you should not be afraid to go ahead and try for it anyways. I think the way to make yourself stand out is to have your narrative and know your narrative. And I know that this is something that Sohila is amazing at, because I saw her go through the process and practice this many different times. And kind of like both of us talk through this with each other many different times, but get comfortable telling your story and kind of get comfortable weaving in random things that you've done in your life, because all of that stands out. A narrative stands out, I think, a lot more than somebody who's coming in and they talk about a bullet point list of every like qualification they might meet. And I just want to say too, like, I used to be terrified of interviewing. I have had many people tell me, like, you were really nervous in that interview. That's okay. It's scary, but you'll get better. And I promise you the person on the other side is really just interested in getting someone in who can be amazing at the job. So I guess, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. And this is kind of something that I wanted to talk about a little bit too, is I did not have, I see a question in the chat that says, do you have any background knowledge with application security? No, not at all. And that's actually very normal in the tech world, just as a disclaimer, like don't feel like you have to go into a tech company knowing anything about the tech at all. Like I have coworkers that are, you know, well into their careers that are still kind of like, so how do I explain this? Like it's so new that that's normal. They're looking for your skills as a marketer and you can learn how to give the pitch. But as far as like figuring out how to apply your background and stuff, like I was going to say, like, if you have been somebody that has had to like arrange a family dinner or like a friend's college dinner party together, you can be a marketer. Like it's not really like the skills and like knowing the difference between PR and brand. It's like pulling all together these skills that are really life skills because a lot of it is people. So I didn't do any like internships or anything like that. I actually worked in restaurants my whole time while I was at school. I worked at Buddha Bowls. I was there like when it started. And even when I graduated, I had no idea what to do. I was terrified. I had no idea how to transfer my skills. So I took a gap year. And I actually went abroad and I worked in restaurants and bars there. And when I got back, I was like, okay, public policy, government. And I lived close to Sacramento. So I was like, how do I do that? And I just didn't get it. Like, I just really couldn't figure it out. And, you know, I struggled because I was like, I went to school, I paid money, I have this major, like, why can't I do that? And I think a lot of people feel that way when they graduate with liberal arts degrees, trying to get into the corporate world or whatever government sector, whatever you may want to do. But what I just went back to was like, I'm really good at managing restaurants. I'm really good at operations, and I'm really good at program and like all of that type of stuff. And that's how I found field marketing as a role. So I actually went and like my friends moved to San Francisco and they're like, we have a literal shoe closet. Do you want to move in? And I was like, yeah. And I worked at a flooring company, which I had no idea I was going to get there, but it was all in events. It was that constant perspective of like, I didn't have an internship. I didn't have connections in the Bay Area. I didn't have a cohesive story with my, switching majors so many times, but I knew that these are the things I'm good at. I'm good at people. I like events. I good these. And I didn't know that was a job until I started looking more in the Bay Area. And then I also saw like a question that was asking like how much we applied. I did apply for a very long time to make the switch into tech. I'll be honest with that. I did apply for like 8 months. But you learn so much, exactly what Peyton was saying. Like I spent so much time reiterating my story and like learning where it honestly was like a eat, pray, love experience, because I was just like, I learned like what I'm really good at. And like, I'm really, really good at these things. And by the end of that 8 months, I was able to just like go into an interview and be like, bam, 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 bam. Like, this is who I am. And that's kind of what ended up working for me.
And it's so true. And I think, you know, looking at the questions too, like one thing that I would want to speak to is like, I found a lot of things through people. And I was able to like, I credit a lot of my success that I've had in my career to just like talking with people all the time, everywhere, and listening to what they told me. I had a lot of people give me a lot of advice that I was really terrified to take. I was like, I can't go ask for that raise. I don't know anything. You know, I can't apply for that job. I don't know anything about it. And they were like, no, just do it. Just try it. So being open to the advice people are giving you, making sure you're talking to people a lot. Like I have always been kind of like, meh about the term networking as a concept. It feels really like forced. But I try to think about it and I try to be good about it. It's just like, I'm literally just saying hi to people every once in a while. I'm literally just introducing people all the time. And I'm really trying to take in what they're saying to me because people will want to help you. That's something that I found all throughout my career too. People are really invested in trying to help other people succeed. So being somebody who's trying to be personable and trying to show you're eager to learn, a lot more opportunities will come your way than you might think. And then just being willing to do the work to make that opportunity work.
Yeah. And on that point too, Peyton, I would just say like something that I felt when I was applying for jobs as a recent grad, I was just like, I will take any and all jobs. And like, I need a job so bad. And I didn't recognize that the job needs you too. Like I know it's hard to feel like that because it just feels like this endless like sea of unknown in a lot of ways, but that's really true. And you do find somebody as a hiring manager that will fit that bid. And something that I've really tried to teach myself, with like how the job market is now, like people change jobs every 2 to 3 years, is it is really helpful to understand the goals that you want out of the relationship you have with that job. So like after the flooring company, I went to another, and I was doing that flooring company specifically to get the title of field marketing and get experience under that. And then I went to this tech company, and it was a very fast-paced startup that was very aggressive and not often like the most wholesome mental health environment is a nice way to put it. And it was really, really hard. But at that time, I was like, I need experience in a tech company for a year. And I need this, and I need to get one promotion while I'm here. Like, that is my goal. And while I was there, I did exactly what Peyton said. I just started talking to people, and that's how I got introduced to partnerships. Somebody just saw that I was willing to do all of the work to get these like 5 resume points that I wanted. And they were like, you would be really great at a more nuanced part of this. I want you to be the partner marketing coordinator. And I was like, what is that? And that's kind of how I got there. But that's really important, because it keeps you at a level where you can like kind of evaluate the job for like what it's actually doing for you, and not just like, oh, the pay's good, or I have a job, which I know right now is a different climate. But I think that that's really important to understand and keep that in mind, because that, especially in startups, like there's always work to be done. And so you need to understand like what you want to grow in and what you want to learn in, so that way you can push your projects in that way. Like I got to this job and said, I want to learn how to write, I want to do more product marketing, and I want to do webinars. And I just kind of like kept manifesting that, and also telling people that over and over again. And that's what I do now. So that it's another way to have more confidence in yourself, I think, when you're like interacting with your employer.
And I think that's so important too, is like keep telling people what you want and what you want to do. You never know when the right person is going to be there that's like, oh, by the way, here's this, or like, you would be great at this. And I think one thing I want to touch on too, like this is a very different climate. There's no denying that. And I everyone feels the stress of it in different ways, but I really want to reiterate to all of you guys, like the importance of, you guys are tech natives. You guys have had technology in your lives your whole life. That is a huge asset. And even if you don't know the industry terms that have been around for 20 to 40 years, and you don't know all the nuances of everything, you still have this knowledge. And that is a huge thing that you're going to be able to apply forever in your careers. And the other thing to think about too, I think in this time, is like everyone has been forced to go remote or digital in some capacity, which is intimidating in a lot of ways. And it means that maybe you didn't have the same in-person access that you did before. But what this does mean is that everyone is now accessible digitally, and they have to be, because they need to adapt. So I would really encourage you guys, maybe it doesn't always feel the most comfortable, but really reach out to people virtually in whatever capacity you can, and be willing to do a video chat or kind of think through how you're communicating with them. But have confidence in your abilities by knowing more about technology and being comfortable in this kind of environment, and maybe be someone that can help other people adapt to this kind of environment too.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
And just echoing like the digital presence that we all have now, something I did to really help myself with the language, because I think that's one of like the hardest barriers when you're starting to apply for jobs and building your resume and stuff. It's like I think there's so many memes about like, how do you like make yourself, like making mac and cheese sound cool or something like that. Like it's really hard. And I honestly just LinkedIn stalked anyone with my title in my industry. It is not weird. I know it says like somebody views your profile. It's not weird at all. Like I just was like, I want to apply for field marketing at this company. And I went and looked at all the responsibilities, and I took those and I put them on my resume and just tweaked them. Like that is one thing. And the other thing is, please don't ever undervalue your experience in sororities, in restaurants, in retail, in clubs, in anything like that. If you've done things like that, like Greek Life or any sort of organization like that, you are a marketer, like whether you might know it or not right now. like if I see somebody that has those types of experiences, and I'm very serious about like the retail and restaurant especially, because I think those get undervalued. I know they have the soft skills that it takes to be a marketer, because they've managed people, they understand goals, they understand, you know, the whole system and structure and working with people. My goal as a hiring manager would be more to be like, is this somewhere that you are going to be happy? Is this exactly what we need right now? Like, we need somebody that's really good at social media. So she's ran social media for Snow Club or something. Like, perfect. Because seeing that somebody took those steps to do those things and also got a degree at the super cool school means that I can teach you anything.
100%. Seal of agreement.
Yeah.
I love the themes that have been kind of weaving through tonight's conversation of just sort of taking responsibility of your own career direction, even if you don't know what you want to do yet, or if you just know a little bit about it. We've never been in a better time for having access to information and insights, and LinkedIn is a great example of that. And just sort of create a free account and search field marketing, and you're going to find a lot of people who do this work, and you don't even have to talk to them yet. You can just spy on their profiles in the most respectful of ways to kind of study, how did they get from A to B? What did they do when they were in college? What did they do after college? Like, what was their path? And that's going to be a good clue. And even better than that, you actually can reach out and introduce yourself to folks. And I know that all the students on the line today are particularly getting a front row seat to a lot of that advice that you are both providing, which is truly invaluable. So I thought I would just kind of ask for any final closing words of wisdom that either of you might have to send us home. We are almost at time here, so yeah, let's see. What do we want students to remember from this session?
I think just really quickly, like, big things: ask yourself what you're like, be honest with yourself about what you like, and then find ways to transfer that into what you're looking for. I think that's invaluable. Another huge thing to think about: UCSB people are everywhere. I have been into some of the most remote places of my life, and I have always found a gaucho there. There's a huge network of people that are ready to help you. They can help you find those jobs you've never heard of. They can give you advice on how to apply for things. So please feel free to leverage that. And really just, like, you know, you don't have to have it all figured out. You will learn things along the way, and you guys are going to be amazing.
Woo. I would just also say one thing that I've learned is, you know, when I was like graduating, I had all these like huge ideas and big ideas about like what I want to do and who I want to be, and I want to change the world. And now that I've been like looking at spreadsheets for 3 years, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to work for so long. Like, and that's something to keep in mind, right? Like, there's two parts of that. One is like, we all are probably going to be working for a long time. So it's okay if that first job isn't like, you know, it for you, or you're not achieving those big dreams you want. Because another part of graduating, especially during this time, is that like we need stability so bad when we graduate, and finding that stability is very important in being able to make the change that you eventually want to make. So don't feel bad, like, you know, or don't question yourself or compare yourself to each other. Like that you're getting somewhere, right? And the other part of that I would also say is, with the whole big idea thing, is like, sometimes I tell people that are looking for jobs, like, think about the daily tasks that you would hate to do the least, because you're going to be working for like a really, really long time. So if you're somebody that needs people, think about that. If you don't want people at all, like, think about that, because that's really what like your day-to-day is going to be filled with. And just like call me or whatever if you want to talk more. I thought we were still going. I wanted to give something nice to say too. I think, you know, UCSB is awesome, and I think that you should have a lot of pride in graduating from there. I still have so much pride in graduating from there, and it feels really, really scary. And those first couple years graduating are just so confusing because you're like in an entirely new structure, but I guarantee you will find a way out of it, and you will know yourself so much better after going through that process and finding that stability for yourself.
UCSB is literally one of the best preparations you could have for the real world, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. And yeah, what Sohila said, always feel free to reach out to us. We're here for you. The network is here for you. Go Gauchos.
Sohila and Peyton, thank you so much for taking time and energy out of this busy work week to chat with UCSB students. I know how grateful everyone is for your truly wonderful thoughts, tailor-made for UCSB students. So a quick shout out to everybody who was tuned in live on tonight's call. You'll receive an email shortly with our speaker's contact information, and you're highly encouraged to follow up to introduce yourself. So why not take them up on their advice in starting to talk to people in what is a very nice, safe space of the UCSB Alumni Network. So thank you to Sohila and Peyton. And just a final reminder to students, remember that UCSB Career Services is here to support your journey, whether you're interested in careers and marketing or really any other field. Keep us in mind. We have a variety of services, from appointments to events and career fairs and Handshake Job Board and much more great tips on our website. So be sure to check us out, career.ucsb.edu, for all the info. And that'll do it for tonight. So take good care, everybody. Stay well, stay safe. And if we've learned anything, keep on going. You can do this no matter what it is you're trying to achieve. You can do it. Have a good night, everybody.